Here is the cause of fear for the neighborhood association, a vintage fire hydrant that doesn't work. Carl Korff, who is president of the Jefferson Neighborhood Association, says there have been 2 fires in the last month or so all around his apartment building, and he and his neighbors began to get a little nervous about that non-functioning fire hydrant.
Well, the first time that we actually noticed it was when we had a fire up the block here. That was on November the 1st. And then, of course, it was reported then by the fire department as being inoperable. And then December the 5th, we had a fire in this complex over here.
Yeah.
And the fire department came out, and they could not get anything out of it. The first fire we had a lot of people out here working, trying to get this hydrant operable, trying to get some water out of it, but nothing ever happened.
Carl said the neighborhood association called their city councilwoman and the fire department, but got no action. Well, I went to the fire department headquarters and asked Chief of Operations Bobby Miles about the dangers of a hydrant that won't produce water.
Now, we carry on our apparatus, our pumping engines, 500 GPMs, or 500 gallons of water, and this will last us approximately 3 minutes with our 1.5-inch line that we initially pull off on a structural fire. Now, another engine company will also respond to this structural fire, and that engine many times will be the one to catch a hydrant, and if one is out of service on one corner, then they're going to catch the nearest hydrant nearby and lay up there. And we have 1,500 feet of hose on each engine, and this will reach almost 1/4 mile to allow for a hydrant that may be inoperable at one point.
Chief Miles said there are 8,000 hydrants in the Oklahoma City area. About 400 of them don't work. He said the responsibility for maintenance of the hydrants falls on the city water department, where I went next. I asked Supervisor Bill Ingram what the problem was with so many broken hydrants.
Okay, the majority of them, probably about 80% of them that are inoperable because the threads in the upper section become wet whenever they're operated, and the lubricating grease in them washes away. Eventually, you reach a metal-on-metal contact, which makes them very stiff to operate, and at some point or another, they'll freeze up altogether.
But you'd have to double your staff in order to get all of those taken care of, I suppose.
I think you'd have to more than double it.
So in the meantime, this fire hydrant is of no use to anybody. Well, just about anybody. The question of grounding the antennas was raised by Linda Yarbrough. She had HBO, or TVQ as it's known, last May. However, she alleged lightning struck the HBO antenna, damaged her roof, ruined her television and the wall socket where the HBO unit and the television were plugged in. Linda said HBO officials would not pay, saying the lightning struck her home electrical wires, not their antenna. Linda felt the antenna was hit and that it should have been grounded.
Did not put the ground wire, nor did they advise us at the time of installation that it was not grounded. Or we wouldn't have had it up there. We would never have had it installed if we did not know that it was grounded.
The Yarbrough's house insurance paid for the damage except for the $100 deductible, which came out of their pockets. After we contacted HBO, General Manager Dick Burbridge reimbursed the Yarbroughs that $100 to try and settle the dispute. HBO officials told me grounding the antenna would attract lightning, not protect the house. I began asking questions about the grounding. The American Standards Testing Bureau, the National Fire Protection Agency, Underwriters Labs, an electrical engineer professor at OU who has done studies on lightning, and KTVY engineers all felt grounding was necessary. I took that information to TVQ General Manager Dick Burbridge to get his response. He said he went back and double-checked with his engineers on the question of grounding.
By far, we are the largest installer of this type of equipment in the world, and we find that to ground these things will cause us a problem and possibly cause the subscriber even more of a problem. Therefore, we just have not done it, and we have not done it very strongly. We've had people ask that they be grounded, and we try to get our engineering people on the phone with them to explain why. In cases we've found where some people have gone up and grounded themselves, and they are assuredly asking for a problem. In most cases where there has been a lightning strike, that has been the cause, that it has been grounded. And until our engineering people have found differently or find differently, we really believe this is the way to do it.
He said not grounding the antennas had nothing to do with added expense or interference with the reception of the television system. Well, what does Oklahoma City's chief electrical inspector have to say on the issue?
Really, in a situation like this, Brad, I think we would have to go with the black box situation. We're not a testing laboratory. And we would have to go with the people that manufacture this product and the people that install it, who accept the responsibility and liabilities that go along with their installation. The people that I've talked with HBO claim that through field tests, their antenna works better and there are less lightning strikes without it being grounded than there are with them being grounded. I understand that they've installed somewhere close to 15,000 of these antennas, and they tell me that they've had 12 lightning strikes so far, and that none of them have been proven lightning strikes.
Bob Court says the national electrical codes do provide for grounding of such antennas.
These are the rules that they've drawn up as a minimum standard. And if you ask me, definitely, what is my opinion, I'd have to go with the National Electrical Code. That's my safe way out. And I'm not going to commit myself otherwise.
The contract was signed by then-President David Cox. The contract stated that Janine could get her money back anytime before the end of this year. However, Janine alleged she could not get Cox to return the $9,000. I talked with David Cox by telephone. He refused to go on camera for an interview, but at that time he told me he was no longer president of Alpha Mud, but was now with Alpha Energy. However, he said he would buy Janine's stock back, but there was no one to sign the check Monday, so he would give it to her in a couple of days. In the meantime, Cox had called Janine and said all she ever had to do was give him a letter indicating a desire to sell the stock. Janine had previously had her attorney send such a letter, but Cox said he never received it, so he took the letter down to Cox today. When we arrived, Cox invited us into his office, but said he wanted no pictures and no interview then, so we shut our camera off. Cox agreed to discuss the matter, but insisted that Janine only had to give him a letter showing she wanted to sell her stock and that in a couple more days, Alpha would have the money. Monday, Cox told us he would have it in a couple of days. Now it will be Friday, he says. Well, today, Janine handed him the letter asking for her money back, so we'll go back once again on Friday to see if he'll live up to the contract with Janine and return her $9,000, which she needs to support her and her two sons until she starts another job. I got a call for help this morning from the cat shelter and Marie Bridgman, known as the Cat Lady. Marie said her water pipes were frozen and her 250 cats were without water. Immediately, I notified the Eureka Water Company, which makes distilled and drinking water. Owner Dave Raup sympathized with the cat's situation and donated 14 gallons of Ozarka drinking water. I'm not sure I like cats this much. When we arrived at the cat house, or rather the cat shelter, Marie Bridgman was waiting for us. I began wondering if someone like myself who's allergic to cats should walk into the shelter.
Do you like cats?
Well, yes, I do. Undaunted by the threat of sneezing, I prepared to take the water in.
Do you think you're brave enough?
Oh, I'm brave enough. Sure. I mean, guess they won't hurt me.
No.
I wasn't so sure about that, but Marie opened the door and I began hauling water for 250 thirsty cats. Pardon me? Excuse me? Pardon me? Excuse me? Takes about 14 gallons a day to water the cats. Marie runs the nonprofit shelter with donations, which makes it difficult to prepare for emergencies such as frozen water pipes. The cats come from everywhere. People bringing in strays, others just looking for a place to put an unwanted cat. And of course, if someone's looking for a cat and will provide a good home for it, Marie is glad to oblige. Well, with barely a sneeze, we got the cats watered. But now Marie is looking for others to donate water until her frozen pipes are fixed.
Well, I'm going to call today and see if I can get somebody with a blowtorch to unthaw something. I'm afraid my plumber said that they could possibly be broken. The pipes could be broken. So if we run into that, we'll have some real problems.
Back. She'd been trying to get it back from Cox allegedly since September. She'd allegedly been trying to get it back from David Cox since September with no. After a divorce, Janine had $9,000 left from the sale of her home. She lent that money to Alpha Mud. Its president then, David Cox, wanted it for some new equipment. He later converted the loan into stock in Alpha Mud. The contract stated she could sell it back to get her money any time before the end of this year. Well, Janine left her job with Alpha when a position she desired never developed. In the meantime, financial problems forced her to seek her $9,000 back from Alpha Mud. She'd been trying to get it back from David Cox allegedly since September with no luck. When I contacted him, he said it would be no problem. But then delays kept coming up. No one around to sign a check. He needed more paperwork from Janine. Last Saturday, Cox said he would sell her stock to a third party in Tulsa and give her the money, but it never turned up. The following Monday, Cox's office said he was ill in Tulsa. However, sources who wish to remain anonymous told me they saw Cox in a South Oklahoma City restaurant Saturday, Sunday, and Monday nights. Still, no money for Janine. Once again, Alpha Mud told Janine to come back today for her money. We talked with her when she came out. Well, after all these trips, you look a little happier this time.
No joke. They're really here.
Okay, and they gave you cashier's checks for
$9,350 and $560.
$560.
Yes.
What do you think now?
I'm going straight to the bank.
You're going to go and cash them and make sure everything's all right?
Yes, I'm going to go cash them. And I'd like to say thank you to God in heaven for these, and to Channel 4 and Brad Edwards. I think that In Your Corner is a great service to Oklahoma, and I commend you.
Without delay, Janine headed for the bank to deposit her checks. I asked her what she would do with the money.
First thing Monday, I'm going to pay back all these people that I owe.
Yeah.
I've had to borrow money from my dad, my father-in-law, my ex-father-in-law, and friends to get through this.
Janine feels she is through with Alpha Mud. Any further contact will come through the Oklahoma Securities Commission, where she filed a complaint against Alpha Mud. Missy Peck goes to the Mustang Elementary School. I stopped in for a visit today to see how she's doing. Missy has had leukemia for almost 2 years now, but it's been in remission most of the time. Once again, Missy's had a relapse. It's called a central nervous system relapse. That means more treatments at Children's Memorial Hospital. Normally, she goes once a week for chemotherapy, which makes her sick at her stomach. But today we found her blending in with the rest of the children in the playground as well as in the classroom, where she's described as a sharp student. The problem we were contacted about is that her mother needs to spend about a month off work caring for Missy's needs while she goes through radiation and chemical treatments trying to get through the relapse.
If I could get, starting in a couple of weeks, a month off, that would be really great. The hospital did tell me that if it comes to the point where there won't be any hope left at all, they will let me know. They're very open and honest about it. But as far as her reactions go to this, I got sidetracked earlier, she has been taking it rather well, and I don't know how the hospital wants me to handle it, but I just told her that I didn't feel like God would take her away from me, that I needed her, and I felt like she needed me, and I didn't think that God would do that.
Judy is divorced and trying to go it alone with Missy these days. Her employer, Smith & Murdoch Attorneys, have agreed to let her off for a month and give her her job back at the end of a month's time. The Mustang Ministerial Alliance, who called us about the problem, is trying to raise enough money to support Missy and her mother through the battle of the leukemia relapse. Reverend Colmia says Missy's chances of recovery have dropped from 50-50 to 20-50. They need $3,000 to $4,000.
She's at a point to where she can go either way, and we're trying to raise enough money so that her mother can take off and be off of work for 4 weeks.
Reverend Colmia and his Methodist congregation have already contributed $500. If you would like to help out, send your tax-deductible donations to the Mustang Ministerial Alliance, Post Office Box 162, Mustang, Oklahoma, 73064, and make your check payable to the Missy Peck Fund. Assistants at the doctor's office called in your corner about the traffic island, and the first battle was finding out who put it there. That's when I learned it was part of the Britton Road Widening Project, an Oklahoma City project using federal funds with the work done by the state. After a couple of years, Milda Mason said they could not get it removed. I talked with City Councilman Bob Franks and city engineers who discovered it was in the city's domain. Then the battle began to see if it could be removed or modified, something to allow access to the full parking area and to prevent the patients from running into Britton Road traffic while concentrating on backing around the island. Milda Mason told me she thought she had reached agreement on a modification plan with the city.
Well, they came out about 4:30 and they said that yes, we could remove the islands if we made the concession that we parked our cars at more of an angle, more like a 40-45 degree angle. Now that did entail that they would have to remove this one next door also, so that the curbs wouldn't prevent the parking. So my boss took me out to dinner and we celebrated and all this sort of thing, and at 9 o'clock this morning they called me and took it all back.
Another city official came out moments later, and we went in to hear the latest plan.
Okay. Miller was just telling me she thought it was all settled yesterday afternoon, and then somebody called this morning and changed their mind. So what's the latest?
I have a plan here that I'd like to show her before I make any comment with the situation.
I think that's fair.
Sure.
I think that's real fair. You want to come back here? Sure.
Can we look over your shoulder?
Well, the official did not want us looking over his shoulder, so we waited until he talked with Milda. However, he claimed the city never agreed to allow the doctors to remove the island completely. I asked Milda about the latest plan.
They said I have to move the building back the front of the building, or the parking area, back 5 feet. Now we're going to have to keep the curb. So what I have to do is I have to pay to remove half this island. I have to pay to remove our planter and our plants. I have to move our parking back, and the way it works out, we now end up with no parking because you can't get in for this barricade out here. Now I'm having to make another concession also. They're going to have to park us at a 45-degree angle, and that means I have to obtain a contract from the people next door to allow us to use their parking, which we can't guarantee we can get that.
Well, it's just a little problem for the city, but it's become a gigantic one for the doctor's office. Milda says it appears with angled parking, they'll have less parking spaces than before. But the doctors are looking over the plan, and the city is waiting for their answer. At least now, the doctors are getting some action, but not exactly what they wanted. Friday night, the Graham Central Station Club added on a cover charge in Missy's behalf, and the crowd poured in despite the freezing weather outside. A poster telling of Missy's battle with leukemia was posted at the door, and on the inside, Graham's promotion director, Rick Reynolds, reminded the crowd about the fundraising event. He introduced me and an unidentified cowpoke who had volunteered to help with the project.
This is Mr. Jerry Adams up here with us. Also the host of In Your Corner, which is a brand new portion of the Channel 4 News where they go out and help all kinds of people. They've done a lot of things to benefit the community. I'd like for y'all to put your hands together for Mr. Brad Edwards from In Your Corner. Now real briefly, I want to run you what we're doing tonight, okay? Everyone that came through the door tonight was charged an extra $1. Every bit of that money is going to go to help Missy Peck. She's 6 years old and lives in Mustang and has leukemia.
Saturday, Graham Central Station accountants began figuring up the donations. Rick Reynolds said Graham had a very charitable group Friday night. Just out of their pockets, people donated over $500. And with the cover charge at the door, a grand total of $2,549.39 was collected for Missy and her mother. Club supervisor Wink Jackson wrote out a check for that generous amount and presented it to me. Judy and Missy were unable to be there to accept it since Missy has been hospitalized, but I handed it over to them at Children's Memorial Hospital.
This is from Graham Central Station. This is a check for $2,549.39. They made it out to the Missy Peck Fund.
This is unreal. I just can hardly believe all this.
Judy was overwhelmed by the generosity of Graham Central Station and its customers, but what impressed 6-year-old Missy was a new doll she had been wanting. It was called the Tippy Toes doll. We found one at the Toys R Us store, and when the employees heard of Missy's plight, head cashier Sandy Arnold took up a collection and bought the doll for Missy. It was the first time I'd seen Missy smile in days. She's hospitalized until her white blood cell count comes up. The chemotherapy causes it to drop, making her susceptible to infection. Missy has pain now from mouth sores, making it difficult to talk. But doctors are optimistic that the uncomfortable treatments will put Missy's leukemia back into remission in several weeks. Well, this morning I met Judy again at the Mustang Methodist Church. Reverend Vic Colmia, who spearheaded the fund drive for Missy and Judy, had more money to present to her, another $2,585. Mustang's mayor and police chief were on hand to witness the presentation from Reverend Colmia.
And we hope that this will alleviate a lot of your worries and problems, and we want to help you as much, and we're happy to help you as much as we could on this.
Thank you. I sure appreciate it. It's unreal. I never expected this much.
Reverend Colmia said he received donations from all over the area and as far away as Bristow. His Methodist Church in Mustang donated $500. $1,000 came in from the Stinchcomb Oil Company, plus many other donations. That, coupled with the money from Graham Central Station, came to a grand total of $5,134. And that will allow Judy Peck, who is divorced, to take a month off of work to help Missy get through her leukemia relapse. And Judy says now she can stop borrowing from Peter to pay Paul while the bills continue to roll in. There were so many letters, I went to see the students at Christ the King School myself. Sister Diane, the principal, took us right into class so we could hear the problems directly from the 6th graders.
The people that like the ducks in the summertime, well, they go out and feed them and everything, but when winter comes, nobody goes out there and they just die, and if they die so much in the winter, there won't be any left for the summer.
Because they do get trained on you feeding them, they depend on you, and when you stop, they're just sitting there saying, you know, like, when's the food coming, and no one's there to give it to them.
The students told me some real horror stories about the Lake Hefner ducks getting frozen in the ice. Some said dogs would run out onto the ice and kill the ducks. Since I'd never had a duck problem to solve before, I asked the students if they had any ideas on how I could solve this problem. They apparently had been doing some thinking about solutions.
The solution is if they can get an aerator that blows water, hot water, through the pond so it won't freeze up in the winter.
I think that it's Lake Hefner's responsibility because everybody's referring to the pond as Lake Hefner's pond. I think they should be responsible because sometimes they walk across the street and they do go into the lake.
We're going to take your letters and go talk to the ranger station here.
But before I left, Sister Diane took me in to visit 3rd graders who had also written letters about the Hefner Duck Pond, but she warned the students that city officials might decide a solution to the problem would be each student taking home a duck to live with them.
So they might say, well, why don't you give each one of those 3rd graders a duck to take care of? Then what would you do? No? They would like that.
My mom would kill me.
My next stop was the Lake Hefner Duck Pond, which attracts droves of visitors in the summertime, but on this particular cold winter day, there were no visitors. However, the students will be happy to know that these ducks do not go uncared for in the wintertime. In Your Corner learned of a lake ranger who specializes in wildlife and has a special concern for the ducks, Ranger Linda Cody.
If any of the kids see a duck frozen out in the lake somewhere, what should they do?
Well, they can contact the ranger at the ranger station where the lake is located, whether it be Draper, Hefner, or Overholser. And that ranger will make arrangements for the rescue of that duck, whether it be contact the fire department and have them assist them in getting to the duck to break him loose from the ice or whatever method is necessary.
Now, I know that wildlife is your specialty, and I'm curious if you think these ducks are underfed or starving during the winter months.
They have less food than they really need. They're not starving, but they do have a little less food than they really need. There's so many ducks out here that we have about 150 to 200 ducks out here, both domesticated and wild.
And Ranger Cody says the students and all citizens can help solve the ducks' problem. She says their main diet is grain, and the students can make donations of grain or money to buy grain to the Volunteers for Animal Welfare, or they can take the grain right to the Lake Hefner Ranger Station.